the Master Your Moment podcast. We are continuing our journey and talking about meditation today with, oh my goodness, Melissa Armstrong. She is an RN and a holistic coach, and we're so excited to have you here today, Melissa.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So we're going to go ahead and talk about meditation again, because that's my theme for March is meditation, and trying to interview different people with different perspectives about meditation. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what you do?
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to. I am, like you said, an RN. I've been an RN for 13 years, and I discovered meditation early on in my nursing career, probably close to the beginning, about 12 or 13 years ago. I struggled myself with just a lifetime of trauma and abuse. My parents were both addicts, and I experienced a lot of abuse as a child, and then had some pretty traumatic events happen to me throughout my young life. And when I was 18, my brother was killed in front of me. So I was really struggling as I became a nurse. I was struggling with my mental health, my physical health. Struggling is like putting it mildly.
Yeah.
And I discovered meditation early in my nursing career as a way to help me heal.
How did you discover meditation? Do you remember hearing about
Yeah.
it or what that moment was like?
Yeah, my now husband actually suggested it to me. I was having just from all of the trauma that I have experienced in my life, and just overwhelming stress of being a new nurse. And we had just bought a house, and my physical health was not good. Um, I started, I was not started, continuing to have like worsening symptoms, having debilitating anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, panic attacks. I was having massive insomnia where I was just not sleeping for like multiple days in a row. I wasn't using any drugs or anything. I was just like literally not sleeping. And when I would not sleep, my panic would obviously get way worse. And
Yeah.
my husband, suggested to me, he's like, why don't you, have you ever tried meditation? Why don't you try to look into meditation and see if that helps? And I had obviously heard of it. I knew like what
Yeah.
it was, but I had never tried it. And I tried it, and it took some time, but almost immediately I recognized that it helped me feel calmer. And I was able to get into this, like, I call it like, when I have a really good meditation, I feel really big. Like I feel like I'm like giant.
Yeah.
It's a very weird sensation. And I almost immediately, like within the first couple of times of trying it, I felt this like overwhelming sense of peace and calm. And I
Mhm.
just kind of ran with it, and I started learning more about it and the different types of meditation, and it helped me immensely. And now I use it in my own practice as well.
Yeah, that's really, really, really awesome. Um,
Yeah.
so what would you like define meditation as? What do you think that it means? Like, what do you do
Oh,
to
that's a
meditate?
great. So, how would I define it? I think I would define it as just being still.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't think, yeah, I think it's just like being still. And I don't even think you necessarily have to be physically still, but just being
Right.
still in the mind, because I do walking meditation all the time where I'm not physically still, but I'm meditating nonetheless. Um, yeah, and my process is typically first thing in the morning, right when I open my eyes, and I you know lay in bed and stretch for a second, and then I get out of bed and I go and sit in front of my fireplace in my bedroom on my meditation pillow with my honeycomb rocks, and I turn on some relaxing music, and I usually use headphones and just sit there kind of like a Rafiki, like meditating in The Lion King. And I
Yeah,
sit there
that's
for
awesome.
generally like 10 to 15 minutes is how I like to start my day. A minimum of 10 to 15 minutes. That's usually all I have time for with the kids.
Yes, I
First thing in the
understand.
morning. Sometimes I get more.
Yeah, exactly. I think, there's probably a lot of misconceptions about meditation. Did you have some misconceptions, when your husband suggested it, and like what have you noticed that even maybe with your practice and the people you see, what are some misconceptions or things that they're like, I'm not sure about meditation?
Yeah, so I don't think I said, but I have my coaching practice. I'm an RN turned holistic health coach, and I my business is holistic health, and I coach people through trauma, intergenerational trauma, stress, overwhelm to heal their mind, body, and spirit. And um, I use meditation with my clients uh, throughout my time with them, and I always almost always hear and thought myself as well from people that, well, if I can't quiet my mind, so if I can't quiet my mind, I'm not doing it right. And that's like probably the number one thing that I hear, and I cannot disagree more. Because the fact, like, meditation is a practice, just like yoga, just like medicine, just like baseball, anything that we do is we're practicing, and meditation is no different. You have to practice it to get good at it, and you have to practice it when you're not stressed and overwhelmed in
Yeah.
order to be able to use it as a tool to help you through stressful and overwhelming situations. I think that's probably the biggest misconception, is that like I can't sit still, I can't quiet my mind, I'm not doing it right. And it's like, no, you're doing it right. It's just that we have a mind, our human brain is designed to keep thinking, and you have to practice to slow it down and get control of it.
Yeah. So when someone is having that, they're going through their first session and they just have these things that just keep popping in their head and over, and they're just like, I can't even handle this, like being still and being in my head. What are your suggestions for that? How do you coach people through that process?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I always encourage people to, first of all, when you're starting meditation, I encourage to start only with 5 minutes, because I feel like that's really like it's not super intimidating where you're like personally myself, like if I had the time, I would sit and meditate for like multiple hours a day if I could, but I don't have the time to do that. But it's very intimidating to think about just like, oh, I'm going to sit there for like 30 minutes. You don't have to sit there for 30 minutes. And the key is that whenever you are meditating, when you have those, because even me, as somebody who I've meditated almost every single day of my life for the past 12 or 13 years, and still I have moments and days where like my brain is just all over the place and I can't get it to be quiet. Um, and and it just nothing, like I'm not able to get it to be still and quiet. And that's okay. And the key in those situations is to just gently guide your mind back. And I think something that was very powerful for me is like gently and without judgment. So I'm
Yes.
not like, I don't allow that to become a more difficult, or that's not the word I'm looking for, but like a point of contention with myself where I'm like, oh, well, I should be still and I should be this. And it's like, okay, oop, there my brain goes, like, okay, let's go back. And then I go back to whatever it is I'm focusing on. For myself, I tend to I'll listen to, like, I don't care a whole lot for guided meditations personally, like when I'm meditating for myself, although I do guide my clients through meditations, but I prefer just calming music. And then I focus I give my brain an image, and it's usually just an image of a candle flame. I just focus on a candle flame. Sometimes I'll say a mantra like so hum or something. I've just something simple and calming just to give my mind something to focus on. And if suddenly I catch myself thinking about, the day or what am I going to make for breakfast or whatever, I just notice that and then go, oh, okay, let's go back to, okay, there's the candle. And
Yes.
then just refocus my attention on that candle.
Exactly. I think that is a really good key and a really good insight for people to understand that with meditation, the practice is that refocusing. And that's the whole point and the purpose is
Yeah.
virtue of having the stillness, and second, to be able to refocus your brain, because our bodies are just so impulsive. Our brains and minds just keep going and thinking, and having that way to refocus. I love that image of a candle. That's awesome. What I think is so cool about meditation is people can come up with their own ways of how they want to do it and what they do want to focus on, because that can help sort of
Mhm.
guide you into what you need to do. So that's really, really awesome. So you
Yeah.
talked a little bit about types. You talked about having an image to focus on, and you listening to sounds, and you also mentioned guided meditations. What other types of meditations um, do you talk with your clients about, or have you tried and experienced for yourself?
So I'll often encourage my clients to do walking meditation because I also feel like that's a bit less um intimidating.
Mhm.
So just really walking and trying to focus on being present in your body, not letting your mind walking and letting your mind run through your to-do list and everything else, but just really being while you're walking, focusing on the steps. How does the ground feel? And I'll do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding. While you're walking, focus on those things that you can see, feel, touch, taste. What does it feel like in your body to bring yourself back into that moment rather than focus on everything else around you. Guided meditation is obviously a very popular one. A lot of, big names, Deepak Chopra and all kinds of other people offer lots of like free guided meditations where they use the words to get you, into a certain state. Um, yeah, that's all I can think
Yeah.
of at the moment. I know there's others, but
Yeah, yeah. I would say the one that I use the most, sort of like when you were talking about when you wake up, um, listen to music and you sit on your pillow, and you had talked about doing a little stretch or something in the bed. I just put my one hand on my heart, on my chest, and then one hand on my belly and do breathing. And I put my watch on first, and I time myself so I'm like 10 minutes, because I thought, I only have like 10 minutes to do it. And
yeah,
I'll do 10 minutes, and it's a timer that doesn't like beep or go off. It just vibrates. So I'll know when it's up because it's vibrated, but then I just breathe and
yeah.
focus on my breath. That's one of my main ones that
I
I like
think
to
even
do.
like yoga can be a type of meditation.
Yes.
Yoga, or like any type of like breath work, or I'll do breath work with my clients and like teach even just like box breathing. Box breathing is a
Right.
type of meditation because I think anything that brings you back into your body is a type of meditation.
Mhm.
Um, and those are good. And just like typical meditation, those are practices. Yoga is a practice. You're not going to be able to do down dog for 10 minutes the first time you do yoga.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, what challenges do you think that people have when it comes to meditation?
The biggest thing that I hear from people all the time is time. I don't
Mhm.
have time. Or I don't know how.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
So those are probably the two most common things that I hear from my clients. I don't have time, or I don't know how. And I think the time piece, I always, like I already said, I always try to decrease the like help people be less intimidated by just saying, start with 5 minutes. 5 minutes a day is, you don't need to meditate for an hour to get the effect and to start feeling your nervous system calm down and go into a more relaxed state. But just 5 minutes a day, and then not knowing how is super simple, because it doesn't really, it's different for everyone. And all you have to do is just be still and be inside of your body. I have a five tips for meditation that I, on my website. It's free. And you can just
Oh, awesome.
learn,
You can send me the link and I'll put it in the description. So that's awesome.
okay.
Yeah, I think the same thing. I think it really has to do with priorities, right? Like if you're prioritizing that stillness and calmness and knowing how beneficial it's going to be when you practice it, then that helps with your time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think people say that I don't have time because they're intimidated, but really, yeah, it's just about priorities. It's you have 5 minutes. You just are using that time to do something else.
Yeah. And how can be pretty simple because there's so many meditations out there that you can just follow and try. I feel like if you aren't sure, you just experience different types, right? Like everybody's got their own kind of way that they like to do things, and you have to kind of experiment with meditation to figure out what's going to work best for you. So you talked a little bit about having trauma as a child and how meditation has helped you sort of heal from some of that trauma that you experienced. And we talked about how I'm starting a course on a trauma-informed classroom. What kind of experiences of trauma did you have as a child? How did that affect you in a classroom?
Yeah, hugely. So as a very young child, my parents were both addicts, and my dad was very physically abusive to my mom and my brother, my older brother. And so I think like in early elementary school, I really struggled with focus. Um, I I was always able to complete my work, and I never really like struggled with getting bad grades or anything, because I think I'm just kind of inherently um motivated to keep going. And I was able to accomplish those things, but I really struggled with focus and being able to get those things done in the period of time that I needed to get them done in. And then when I was 15, there was a school shooting at my high school. And that was incredibly difficult and interfered, obviously, as you can imagine, greatly with my education. And again, the problem with focus came up, where I couldn't focus on anything else but my emotional and mental symptoms. It was very triggering, to be at school and have a shooting happen, and then to try to go back to school and be in the frame of mind where you can learn is quite difficult.
How did the teachers handle that? Did they adjust to anything? What was their approach in trying to come back and reorient? Because I'm sure that they were probably dealing with that same trauma too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the shooting happened in March. It was March 5th, 2001. So it was a couple of months before the end of the school year. So like for the rest of the school year, school was basically canceled and optional. So like I think they stopped taking attendance. It wasn't required to go, and you didn't really have to explain why. And then there wasn't a huge emphasis on the school work part of it. It was more about like emotional healing. They had trauma counselors and resources available on campus, like during school hours, for the whole I mean, I think actually it was for a couple of years after that, but definitely for that whole rest of that year. Um, yeah, they definitely had to pivot because you can't, I mean, people died,
Right.
and
Yeah.
like you can't kids like myself, we didn't have it wouldn't have been possible to try to go back and just immediately jump right back into school.
Yeah, absolutely. That's terrible. It's every school's nightmare to have happen. So, I'm
Yeah.
glad that you were able to kind of get through that and overcome that. Um, so tell us a little bit about your holistic coaching program. What steps do you take and what do you do to help your clients?
Yeah, so I work with clients in a over a sustained period of time, usually 3 to 6 months, so we can really establish a very trusting relationship and build on the progress that they're making. I see clients with varying degrees of emotional trauma, intergenerational trauma. That's something in my own healing journey that I learned was so important. Myself personally, I've experienced a lot of trauma, but also both of my parents had, and so had their parents back at least 5 generations on both sides of my family tree. So intergenerational trauma is interesting because that's research shows us that when you're exposed to trauma, it can actually change how your genes are functioning and how they're expressed. And so when you're exposed to a lot of trauma, or not even a lot, just exposed to trauma in general, you can change your genome and then you pass that along to your future generations. So,
Mhm.
the I say now, like, the cards were stacked against me before I even was born because of all the trauma that my parents had experienced and their parents and their parents and their parents. Um, so I think it's really important to work with clients over a period of time. Having just 1 or 2 appointments here or there is not going to get somebody the
No,
best
it's
result.
not. Yeah.
So I work with clients with varying degrees of that. Not everybody comes in with a laundry list of crazy trauma experiences like myself, but some people have lots of trauma, and it's important to start kind of unpacking that and also teaching my clients how their own first of all, I always empower women to take control of their healing journey. So I think, coming from my perspective as a nurse, having worked most of my career in the traditional medical model, I think that we're taught to listen to your doctor because your doctor knows best, and they're gonna, they have your best interest at heart and they know what's right for you. And I think that while that is true to some extent, I very much disagree with just listen to your doctor. I think that you have to listen to yourself and listen to your gut and trust your gut first. And then you take the information that you get from trusted professionals and you implement those things into your life, how they fit into your life, if they fit into your life. And
Right.
it doesn't always. And I think even just because somebody has an MD behind their name doesn't mean that they know what's best for you. Um, and I think that's something that I really empower my clients to trust their gut and learn to lean into that feeling of knowing, and I feel like when if and part of
Mhm.
that is meditation, getting still and learning to lean into that feeling of the gut or the universe or God, or just that feeling of knowing, and that
Yeah.
comes from an intuition of a connection to a higher power, that kind of thing. So that's one of the pillars of my program, is kind of that mindset and um, um, that piece of it. And then using the somatic techniques. So breath work, meditation, um, we talk all about nervous system regulation and how important that is. And my whole, my why, and the reason why I wanted to heal so much is because I wanted to break the cycle.
Yeah.
There
I was
have
going to
been
ask you
cycles of,
about that.
yeah,
Yes.
cycles of abuse in my family and a long line of trauma and abuse and addiction. And I wanted to break the cycle so I didn't repeat those things in my own parenting journey. Now I have two young boys myself. So learning to regulate my own nervous system,
Mhm.
co-regulate, and then that this is something I talk to my clients about. We learn to regulate our nervous systems by co-regulating as young children to our trusted adults, so our caregivers.
Right.
Most of us are our parents, our mother, right? Most of us
Mhm.
before the age of 7, we learn to regulate our nervous system by co-regulating to with our parent, with our mother. So if your mother is somebody who is stressed out, overwhelmed, not taking care of herself, she's having physical symptoms from the stress, insomnia, not dealing with trauma, a long list of things can cause that kind of hurt your mother to be in that sympathetic nervous system or fight or flight nervous system state all the time. That's how you're going to learn to regulate your nervous system.
Right.
So,
I see that so much in the schools and because
yeah,
I'm a school counselor, and when I see students and they may not have experienced anything like that, like a big traumatic event or anything that's caused, nothing should have like caused them to maybe have stomach aches and go to the nurse every day. But because they have that co-regulation with maybe a parent who is
yeah,
overwhelmed, anxious, or whatever, they're
yeah,
having those same kind of symptoms as well. So I totally
yeah.
100% like I'm with you. I totally know what
So
you're
I
talking
want to empower women to take control of their own health so that they can positively impact the health and journey of their children and subsequent generations after that. Because if we're teaching our children how to regulate their own nervous systems, they're going to be able to teach that, to their lineage as well. And conversely, like if you're very regulated and calm and able to come at life like, okay, things happen, trauma happens, car accidents happen, people die, like things are
right.
horrible things happen. But if you're able to regulate your nervous system and respond appropriately, your children are going to learn that as well. So focusing on the mindset, the somatic piece, and then I also talk a lot about lifestyle. So diet, exercise, detoxification. There's a lot of toxins in our food, in our water, in our air, in
Yeah.
our laundry soap, in our, cleaning chemicals, in our makeup. So we talk a lot about detox, lifestyle with, food choices and everything. I'm not a nutritionist, so we don't spend, I don't nitpick out little fine details, just education.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And also doing functional medicine lab testing. So I focus mostly on the adrenals, cortisol levels. So we do like female hormones, um, uh, general like blood wellness panels, so I can see like cholesterol, vitamins, and then I usually do a hair tissue mineral analysis to see like kind of what's going on in for the past 6 to 12 months with your minerals, and because that can sometimes trigger some more anxiety provoking symptoms as well. So looking at all of that and looking at each individual person as like an individual whole
Right.
person with systems that are inextricably connected, and focusing on the mind body connection, because when you have all of that stress and overwhelm and you're in that state of fight or flight, like you're going to fight a tiger at any given time when it's like 11 p.m. That's not good for your health. And then you can start to have physical symptoms as manifesting from that. So trying to get control of the mind so that we can heal the body and heal future generations.
Yeah, that is really, really awesome. I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um, I always say it always starts with that awareness piece, right?
yep,
And meditation is the tool that gets you that awareness. And then you can change
absolutely.
your mindset and then work on all the physical stuff. Because that's what I'm really interested in too, is helping people get to physical, emotional, and mental wellness because
Yeah,
that's what's
and
going
it's
to make you
so
live a
needed.
happier, longer life. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, what advice or messages would you like to share with our listeners as a lasting impact?
I always my kind of like tagline and what I tell people all the time is healing is possible. I I think that a lot of times, again, coming from the perspective of somebody who worked in the traditional medical model for so many years, and as a patient myself in that model, in that system, what I was told very often was healing is not possible. And you're gonna, or I remember having conversations with patients with, or being there with patients while the doctor's talking to them and saying, yep, this is something you're going to deal with for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And that, and I just don't disagree. I don't, excuse me, I don't
Yeah.
agree. I
Yeah.
think any disease or condition can be uh, analyzed and treated with lifestyle, diet, mindset, and shifting your life. Transformation is possible. It's
Hmm.
not easy, but healing is possible.
Yeah. So your last message is really about hope. Hope
Yeah.
that there is something out there
Yep.
that can help you.
Don't
So
let anybody tell you that it's not, because it is.
that is really, really awesome. So Melissa, if people want to work with you or find out more information, where could they find you?
Yeah, so my website's holistichealthbymelissa.com. And I've got some freebies on there, a nervous system regulation quiz, and to see how regulated or not your nervous system is, as well as some tips about how to heal that or start regulating that nervous system. Also, my 5 tips for meditation. And you can sign up for my email list that way, or you can find me on social media. I'm mostly on Instagram, but on every social media platform and YouTube, I'm Holistic Health by Melissa.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was really great.